don't need to be an eco-warrior to think that sustainability matters. Concern about the environment is increasingly mainstream. We can drive less, recycle more, and consume more carefully. But what about our investments? Coming up in this episode of Money Talk, Emma Montgomery finds out how professional investors are taking environmental, social, and governance issues on board. Dan Lane investigates the behavioural biases which drive our long-term investment returns. But first, over to Ed Monk, who's looking at a different kind of sustainability. How to make our money last through a retirement which might run to 25 years or more.
If there's one thing you can be fairly sure of, it's that you'll get less for your money in the future than you do now. You just need to look how the price of the weekly shop has changed to see that. Inflation is a significant risk to your money in the long term, and it's one of the reasons why managing your pension pot in retirement can be such a challenge. You've got to set a level of income that you can live from, and comfortably if possible, but which leaves enough invested that you can cope with rising prices, not just now, but for decades to come. Fidelity's research shows that it's a difficult balancing act. The more you take from a pension, the less chance there is that it will last. You could take a high amount, but this means you'll only have a 50-50 chance of your pension money lasting, particularly as this needs to be upped each year to keep pace with inflation. If you reduce the amount you take, your chances improve, and if you're willing to take even less, you'll get to the point where your money has a very good chance of lasting, even accounting for rising prices. But setting a sustainable level of income at the start of retirement is only part of the challenge. Because your pot will rise and fall with markets, income that looks sustainable now could become unaffordable very quickly. James Carter from Fidelity explained more. James, we've been looking at the trade-off between taking a higher level of income and the chance that your money will run out in retirement. But setting a sustainable income at the start of retirement, that's just the beginning, isn't it?
Absolutely, that's right. It's really important to keep track of what's going on with your income. Having a target level at outset is a great place to start, but you need to keep track of the assumptions that you're making at that point. So you'll need to make assumptions about your living costs, about your investment returns, and how long you might live ultimately. So you've got to keep track of those factors and keep an eye on them, and be open to adjusting the level of income to ensure that it lasts as long as you need it to.
And I suppose that means that your level of income might rise or fall in retirement.
Ultimately, it can mean that, and I think you need to be open and flexible to that option. Keeping track is really important, as I said. And if you are open to making a small adjustment to your income in the short term, that might mean that it's less likely you'd have to make a more drastic reduction in your income later on, or indeed even run out of funds altogether.
And what we're talking about here is invested pension money, but what about other sources of income in retirement? How do they affect your decisions around your invested pension pot?
So I think it's really important to consider any guaranteed income that you've got. So that might be from a defined benefit pension or from a state pension. Those guaranteed levels of income can give you a lot of confidence and reassurance. And that might mean you're able to take either a higher level of income or perhaps some more investment risk with your invested pension pot. If your guaranteed income doesn't cover your fixed outgoings, then you might want to consider buying an annuity to give you that extra peace of mind.
And these decisions might be okay if you're confident with financial matters, but what about those people that are less confident?
Yeah, so there's lots of free guidance out there. Importantly, the government offers an impartial guidance service called PensionWise. We'd really encourage people to engage in that. But it might be that people need to consider getting advice from a financial advisor, someone that's a specialist, someone that can track their pension pot annually and ensure that their income is performing as they need it to. We'd really encourage people to get in touch with a financial advisor if they need to.
It would be great if we could be certain about the future, but the reality is that we can only ever make broad assumptions about the future. However, if you're willing to stay flexible and to react to new information about market returns and about your own circumstances, you'll have a much better chance of making the most of your pension savings. Next up, it's my colleague Emma Montgomery, who's also been thinking about how to make investments sustainable for the future.
Today we're all more aware of how our lifestyles impact the world around us. in everything we do, from how we work and travel, to what we eat and what we wear, there's a growing demand for accountability and sustainability. It's also becoming increasingly important to factor in when it comes to investing. And it's big business. Alice Early is a fashion designer whose design practice is dedicated to environmentally and socially conscious craftsmanship. Alice, sustainability is at the heart of your design practice, and everything from the buttons you use to the boxes you package the garments in.
Yes, I use 100% organic cotton, which is certified by GOTS, the Global Organic Textile Standard. This standard is really important to the farmers working on the land, as no pesticides or toxic chemicals are used in the production, and it is also covered by the International Labour Conventions, which covers everything from minimum wages, conditions the workers work in, and discrimination.
Presumably these materials aren't cheap to source though?
They're not cheap, they do cost more than conventionally harvested cottons, but people are receptive to them and they are prepared to pay the price. I think that if something is too cheap, someone else has paid the cost.
Was there something in your previous experience that prompted you to take a sustainable approach?
Yes, having worked in industry for 10 years, I've seen a huge amount of waste in the production line, and I think I wanted to look into the sourcing of materials and see how I can bring that into a more sustainable product.
Alice, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Businesses that don't put sustainability at the heart of their proposition are missing a trick. But they're also likely to fall foul of investors who are increasingly aware that sustainability has to be at the core of their investment strategy. Ned, the big question, what is sustainable investing?
So this is a hotly debated topic, and there's no correct answer because there is no set standard of what sustainable investing really means. To us at Fidelity, we really think of sustainable investing as a set of principles that we've added into the investment process to help investors make better decisions to deliver financial return and total social return.
How does an investor who wants to invest sustainably know they are investing sustainably?
It breaks down into three broad areas. There's environmental questions, there's social questions, and then there's governance questions. And then there are detailed ways that investors can analyze each of those criteria to ultimately think, does this meet sustainability criteria? Does it match with my fund objectives? And when the two of those align, you've got a really good sustainable investor.
Does sustainable investing come at a price?
I think we're pretty convinced that we can deliver total social return without giving up any financial return. We think we can deliver total social return on top of the financial return, and that's the promise that we think we can make to clients.
So it isn't a case of one or the other. It is possible to have both.
It's possible to have both, and we think that the best companies who invest their capital sustainably are going to be the companies that are financially going to perform the best.
Sustainability is becoming prevalent in all walks of life. Are there any changes you've noticed when it comes to investing?
It's so fast, it's hard to keep up. The number of client queries that we have about sustainable investing funds has dramatically amplified over the last couple of years, and all regions of the world too, which is really interesting. It's spiraling in a good way.
One of the things that is so exciting about working at Fidelity is that the analysts that we work with engage with companies 16,000 times per year. It's once every 10 minutes. And so the amount of opportunity that we have to engage with those corporates, whether it's on issues of remuneration, whether it's on issues of environmental risk, we get to have those conversations every single day.
Investing with an eye on the longer term is always a smart move. Investing with an eye on the future of the planet and the generations to come is even smarter. Talking of the longer term, Dan Lane now looks at how our natural biases can affect the returns we make.
What's the biggest roadblock to making good decisions? Too much choice? Too little time? Often the chief culprit is simpler than you think. Our brains are hardwired to making quick, snappy judgments based on the information we have at hand, rather than the slow, methodical decisions we'd probably prefer. Put us under pressure and the effect gets even worse. Take a simple game, guessing the height of St. Paul's Cathedral. How would you get on? What height do you think St. Paul's Cathedral is?
400 feet. 200 meters.
150 feet, so I think it's 200 meters. 300 meters.
About 400 feet.
50 meters. 40 to 50.
Whew. 280, 300.
Was that meters or meters?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, what if I told you that the average guess is around 100 meters or 330 feet? You're allowed to change your answer now that I've said that. What would you think?
I'd say I'm a bit out.
Okay, well, you can change your answer. What would your new answer be?
120.
You can change your answer if you like to, or you can stick with yours. What do you think?
If I was to run that, it's maybe more 120, maybe
120?
150. Yeah.
Would you change your answer?
150.
150 meters?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. And what if I told you that the average guess is more around 300 feet? Would you like to change your answer?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, I think that's too high.
Would you change your answer?
Probably not.
No, you're going to stick with what you are?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
No, you're going to stick with 200?
Sure, yeah.
Would you change your answer?
No.
No, you was going to stick with 600, 550?
Yeah, I would even go maybe a little bit higher. But
Okay. But of course, the answer isn't really what's important here. What matters is how we reason our way towards it. I caught up with Jez Grimm, a choice architect and behavioural consultant, to find out how our guessers are thinking. Jez, what's going on in people's heads here?
Well, it's fascinating. It's known as the anchoring bias, and it's one of 150 different biases, and this one's really relevant for financial services and investing. And yeah, our brains like to make decisions quickly and conserve energy. They're known as cognitive misers. And when we draw that line in the sand, so you mentioned this 100 meters, our brains love that because it gives them this, I suppose, this line from which they can work from. And people don't like to deviate so much from that line because it sets what we call this anchor in their mind, and it can be very helpful sometimes. But sometimes I think when you're maybe in equities and you're buying at a particular share price, maybe not so helpful. So imagine you buy a share at a certain price and then it goes down. You're anchored by that initial price. It's gone down versus that initial price. But actually, when you look at the history of maybe how that equity's performed, it's got a big opportunity to grow. And actually, you might want to sit tight on that. And I think that's sometimes when anchoring bias can maybe be a little bit unhelpful with our decision making. I think it's been well documented in behavioural finance about overtrading can sometimes be quite detrimental. So for sure, I think having a good conversation with yourself or other parties, it may well be with the investment house you're with or with an advisor, and then setting through strategies depending on what your broader context is, what's your capacity for risk, what's your knowledge of that risk and what you can deal with. And that'll change over your life. And then make some strategic decisions that you review. So yeah, for sure, I think, doing too much is quite harmful. Doing nothing at all and being very passive, I think, is particularly harmful. But getting that appropriate balance to think about, well, how often should I be doing this? And how should I be doing this, I think is a really, really healthy thing.
Really interesting. Thanks very much, Jez.
Thank you.
There you have it. Successful long-term investing is as much about having a cool head as a full portfolio. And sometimes the best decision-making comes before the questions are even asked. Oh, and by the way, back to Tom now to hear what's in store for the next episode of MoneyTalk.
Thank you, Dan. So whether we want our investments to be longer, greener, or simply better, an awful lot of it's in the mind. After the summer, we'll be back with a brand new series focused on real people navigating their investment journeys. So whether you're a millennial just starting out, a growing family keeping their finances on track, or you're heading towards a hopefully comfortable and fulfilling retirement, there'll be something for you in our new series, The Investors. Keep in touch with us at fidelity.co.uk and across all the usual social media to make sure you don't miss us in September. Until then, from me and my team, have a great summer. Goodbye.